Hi, and welcome to Athletic Pursuits, the podcast that journeys all aspects of high school sports. I'm your host, Ben Schreiber, and I'm looking forward to diving into the realm of high school sports and athletics with you. We will explore all aspects of high school sports and athletics, including working out in the school environment, representing your school and a sports team, dealing with injuries, and more. We will discuss stories of people that demonstrate expertise or participate in these topics. We will discuss the good, the bad, and the truth behind what it's like to participate in athletics while maintaining the balance of being a full-time student. So get ready for a journey of fun and excitement. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. On today's episode, I have a special guest, Coach Nick Stow. He currently oversees the Apex, the school's gym facility, and he will share everything there is to know, from the history to the community of the Apex. Hey Coach Nick, how are you today?
I'm good. Welcome to Apex 2.
Thank you. Yeah, the second floor is turning out well. Like there's more machines now, I see.
Yeah, I'm really happy. We still have a proper rack to come, a Stairmaster, and like some better storage, but also a bar that will go along the far end that will allow people to do pull-ups and use a TRX. But we're I'm happy with how it looks, and I feel like it's a really good facility now, and will only get better in the future.
Yeah, from last time I was here, there was like a couple, and now I see like there's the cables and more leg machines and all that.
No, definitely. Like when we opened up Apex 2 at the beginning of the year, it was a little bit frustrating from my side that we had this amazing space, and I basically had to bring up equipment from the main floor to make sure there was some stuff up here. So it wasn't great, but it takes time to order equipment, delivery, and then installation. So whereas I wish it looked like this at the beginning of January, we pretty much had it in good shape early March, and I'm expecting more new stuff in April. So I think the future is exciting. It's only going to get better.
Sounds good. So tell me a little more about the Apex, like even the first floor as well. Like when you started working here, how is it formed and stuff?
Sure. So this is my 5th year at SAS, and one of the first things probably I looked for when I came to work at the school was the gym, and so it was in its previous evolution. Same space, I believe. Yeah, it was the same space, but very different. And I would often, in and around like subbing and coaching, I'd often try and get in here a couple times a week, and then I'd also train at my condo gym. But as through the years, I've spent more and more time here, whether that be working with Catalyst on a regular basis, coaching more often, and then for 2 years as a supervised study leader. I would often try and come in here at lunchtimes because I didn't have advisory responsibilities. I wouldn't generally come in after school, which is when students would use it. And obviously we had some supervision before, and but my sort of my experience of Apex post-COVID, so the new facility, albeit not with all the new equipment, was really me just coming in at lunchtime, which worked for me. I had an empty gym, but I didn't really have a feel. Well, if you asked me what's it like in the afternoon, I would have had no idea. Obviously, fast forward to this school year, sort of this whole area became my responsibility. I've really enjoyed it. I don't think it's a secret to anyone that I feel quite passionate about the space, but more importantly, what the space offers for young people in terms of both their physical health, which is a bit more obvious, right? You train, you get stronger. But I think perhaps more importantly for me, like their mental health and psychological well-being. Both definitely. Because of the benefits that exercise gives you, but also the sort of self-esteem and I know that people work pretty hard here from an academic perspective. So definitely, we could describe as a high-stress environment. And I think that getting that regular physical exercise is so important. So it's been great, to be able to, I would hope support people coming in here and try to make it a more inclusive space. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was not really being here in the afternoons, and perhaps in talking to people that did come in the afternoon, it was maybe dominated by a certain kind of group of kids, mainly boys. And they would play their own music. And look, I don't try and police what people play on their own headphones, but I do think that things like the music are really important to the culture of
like on the
place.
speaker, it's different. Yeah.
And let's face it, like, a lot of people like listening to hip hop. I grew up with hip hop. I love hip hop. But sometimes that and other music, the more popular version, can be somewhat misogynistic and kind of creating a very masculine environment. So I think, whilst you didn't ask this primarily, like, I'm kind of leading into my primary goal this year was to sort of adjust the culture a little bit. Not to dissuade the people who are already coming from training, because there's a lot of people who are really focused on training here, and that's great. But just try and make it a space that perhaps a wider group of people are free to come and use because of those benefits that we talked about. And I want everyone, from the varsity rugby captain to the arts kid who loves drama and dance, to the musical kid, to the STEM kid. I want everyone coming in here because, if as we say, we fundamentally believe that it's going to have a positive physical and mental benefit, then I want everyone to experience that, because most important thing to me is mental health. So people are happy and that their high school experience is positive, and I think that Apex can have a massive impact on that.
Yeah, and like you were saying about how you're trying to make the space more inclusive. I've heard like the Women's Wednesdays program was going on, then you put a pause to it, and now it's back up here. So how did that idea come to be, and you put into place? Do you think it was a success?
So the evolution of that idea was, it kind of dates back to my interview process for the role, and just acknowledging in terms of what goals might be for the space. And from the beginning I wanted it to be an inclusive space, and I've worked in gyms for like 15-20 years, and they tend to be somewhat dominated by males, and there's lots of social reasons for that. I think things are changing, which is positive, but I think I mentioned in the interview that I'd be open to exploring things like that. So I'm used to there often being a majority of males, and you could look at other types of workout facilities like studios where maybe you're looking at yoga or Pilates that actually swing the other way. But I kind of see controlled out, but I can have an impact here, and it's very important to me that young women or anyone that doesn't identify as a young man feels comfortable coming to Apex and finding their way. So going back to Women's Wednesday, I think we talked about that, like looking at ideas to encourage more utilization by our non-male population. And then fast forward to once I've started in the job, I don't know how much you're aware, but there's the Apex committee, which is the student-run committee, which kind of does a lot of thinking and supporting of the facility. And I don't know. I think I reached out to them. I can't remember exactly, but they definitely took it forward and wanted to run with it. And so probably halfway through last semester, we started to implement Women's Wednesday on our Wednesday from 3 to 4:15. At that time, we didn't have the main floor, so it meant we used the main floor.
I remember I wanted to go one day, but then I remember it was Wednesday and I couldn't.
And I think there was some frustration from some individuals. It was never my intention to stop people training. That's one thing why, like, opening up on Mondays, opening up on day lunchtime, opening up flex periods on Wednesday and Thursday, but also acknowledging that, like, by just removing access for an hour 15 over a week, if you're motivated, you're going to find a time to train, right? It may not be at the most convenient time, but I thought it was a price worth exploring, with the benefit of getting more people in here from perhaps groups that don't normally come. So it was pretty successful, even if at times there wasn't a huge number of people coming in. What we did see is a gradual increase in uptake or utilization from our female/non-male population. While I'm talking, I'll see if I can show you the data, because it's quite interesting. So anyway, we did that up until, I guess, late semester 1, which was around the time when people really started prepping for exams. which was another interesting data point because female utilization really dropped off in December. Now, coincidentally, that was around the time that we stopped running the Women's Wednesday. However, I also think it may have been just linked to a greater focus on exam prep. So what we're looking at here is the data.
Yeah, I've noticed that you do have like a form every time you enter. So how does that, like, you think that's a success? Because
I mean,
when I first came to the Apex this year, I realized like, you have to fill in a form to enter. And I thought about it, I'm like, this probably makes sense. Like, you can collect data. And I want to see like.
So I think in a perfect world, I recognize that you would just swipe in, all right, and it would collect that data. I do understand there is a minor frustration, or it's a request that I'm asking everyone to do when they come in. And I know in this day and age people aren't necessarily used to doing that every time they enter a facility, but it does give useful data around who's coming, when they're coming. I also slip in that question about what you're focusing on today, and that's partly for me, but it's also like a little bit of sports psych in there, whereas I think that if you articulate your plan, you have a goal, you're much more likely to be intentional about it. It's also interesting for me to look. So just going back to the data, as we're talking about the collection of data, when we first started back in August, you can see that the approximate female usage was about 17.5%, which is pretty small, right?
Yeah.
It's over 4 to 1 male to female. And you can see like gradual increase up until November, where we were up to 25%. So, 1 in 4. And then the drop off, which I mentioned.
Exams,
but I'm happy to say that, we're seeing a really positive increase where February we were up to 30%. And I know that numbers don't necessarily make a great podcast, but and we're hovering around that 25 to 30% at the moment.
I can see there's an increase,
Yeah, now I can't categorically say that was due to Women's Wednesday, right? But I think this is a manifestation of a number of factors in and around that, like trying to build an inclusive culture and reinforce not just females, but like anyone that comes into the space and supporting them. Now, I see you relatively regularly in the space, but that doesn't mean I should just like ignore and take you for granted, right? Every time you come in, I'm happy that you're here. Now, the second evolution of Women's Wednesday is the beauty of having Apex 2, is that normally it's an adult space from 3 to 4:15, and all we've done there is that we have turned it into a female/non-male space from 3 to 4:15 on a Wednesday, which means both adults and students can use it. But then any male that wants to train at that time, be that student or adult, we just
can go downstairs.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone's a winner on that one. And again, it's never been my goal to restrict people's training, but I do acknowledge that in operating Women's Wednesday in the first semester, there was some restriction for training for our male population.
You gotta find that like middle point, like that balance where you can't deny people from training, but you also want to have that safe space for females to train.
And despite that, I still think it was the right decision, because I think that when you have a group of people who are accessing something regularly and are able to and feel comfortable, whilst I don't want to take that for granted, I think the priority is sometimes to look at people who are not doing it. So I would do it again, despite the fact that I know that there was some frustration about it, but I'm overjoyed that I can offer both. That's the ideal scenario, but like I say, I do think it was a price worth paying, even though some people were frustrated about it.
Yeah. So you did say that in your survey you ask what you decide to train. So based on that, what do you think people train the most? Would it be strength training, plyometrics, injury rehab, or what?
Yeah, I mean, so what's interesting is that we have different sort of groups of people that train, right? So if it's during the day, like an Eagle block, which is an area that I really would like more people to come to. I mean, you can see that we're sitting in here right now and there's no students training, right? Now, I would like that to change. Having said that, I do acknowledge that Eagle blocks are a time to meet with teachers and, get homework done, prep for tests, right? And, whilst I would always prioritize physical and mental health over academics, I can see that academics impact both of that, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, if a student has a test in the fourth block, it's probably better they prep for that than come for a workout. Now, in a perfect world, that student would have prepared for that test, and then perhaps having a workout prior would be helpful, would be beneficial, right? Good for energy levels, good for focus.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was a teenager once too, and, you know, there is that tendency to leave things and procrastinate. So I do understand.
It could be other reasons too.
Yep.
Like maybe they have their own schedule.
Yep.
Like me personally, I usually I'd rather go after school.
Sure.
And like sometimes I come to the Apex with friends, and because it's
Yeah.
3:15 to 4, like timely is
Sure.
really good.
Yeah.
But then when I don't, I like have my home gym, but that does
Yeah.
take up more time. But
Yeah.
usually I have like a schedule, and
Yeah.
maybe other people have as well.
I hear you, yeah, and a plan. And obviously, if you were to come in Eagle blocks, effectively the timing would always be changing because of how our day rotates, and you might be coming by yourself. And there is an important social, psychological benefit to exercise, and some of that is about being around other people. I acknowledge that. But if we just return to the people that do come, they tend to be very focused on something specific because they're making that choice to come.
Yeah.
You then have the kind of group that come in at 3 o'clock to 4:15, which tends to be somewhat variable and younger in profile. And for that social reason, often, you know, they're hanging out and they're training. So you tend to see a lot of chest and arms, like maybe to be fair, like upper splits, so either push or pull, with some legs. And then sort of around 4:15, it tends to, you know, people leave on the bus, it tends to get a little bit more focused again, where maybe you mentioned powerlifters earlier, or people training specifically for a sport, a little bit more focus, and then you get a more overall focus on training. So, you know, much more focus on lower body, because if you're an athlete, you know, the lower body is what really
Legs is really
matters.
important.
Yeah. But if we were to look, I haven't run the numbers on this, but I suspect that you would see a lot of like chest and back or chest and arms, the mirror muscles, the beach muscles, right?
Yeah.
And look, again, like, you know, when I was your age, I had a bench press in my room, you know, so like whenever I, you know, whilst I aspire to greater balance in my training and would encourage greater balance in people's training, I also understand that, like, you know, part of the motivation for training is aesthetics, and you tend to focus on what you see in the mirror as opposed to what you see behind you, right?
Yeah.
So I totally understand it. I think the key is people are being active, and if they want to have a conversation about a more holistic approach to training, then I'm here. But I'm also like, I'm just pleased people are in training and enjoying themselves, right?
Yeah.
I think, you know, I haven't really said this to many people, but, you know, one of my goals is for people to find joy in movement. And whilst we focus mainly on resistance training and perhaps some cardio here, I also completely committed to the idea that, like, dance and group exercise classes, you know, the sort of thing that Miss Pong runs, can also have all those benefits that we talked about. We just tend to have a different focus. And, you know, sport very much for myself as well. Like, I think, you know, as a form of exercise, I'd much rather chase after a football than jump on a treadmill, right? Yeah. But we just have to find what you love, find what you feel joy in, and just promote that.
Definitely. Is that what Apex 3 is going to be, like a more group stance type of area? Exactly.
So Apex 3 is much more of a group exercise space. During the day, it gets used by the PE classes that focus on those areas, which tends to be, you know, classes run by Miss Pong. And then after school, she runs her House of Pain student focus class up there.
Yeah, I heard of that.
And then we're basically moving towards, I don't know if you've heard of the WOW program, but this is a program dedicated to kind of wellness within the adult population. So the staff and faculty, run by a lady called Miss Winstrom in the elementary school, I believe. And so she's going to be moving classes in there. So, you know, yoga classes or Zumba classes that our adult population will enjoy. And then from about 4:30, the plan would be that it's a rain space. So, you know, if a team is practicing and loses that outdoor space, they could be using that. And actually, that is the same plan for Apex 2, where adults are in here till 4:15, 4:30, and then if I need to kick them out, because let's say the touch team, or what are we doing this year, say softball, let's say there's a lightning alarm, softball need to train, then I would potentially shunt the adults downstairs, and softball could come in here. The reality is, this time of year, it's less of a factor. As a middle school tennis coach, I have brought my middle school girls up here to do some, like, change of direction, stroke agility, plyometric work once. So yeah, I think, we are expanding all the time the opportunities for movement, which I think it can only be good for our entire population, because whilst I want you to be fit and healthy as a student, I also think you benefit when your teacher is fit and healthy and feeling good.
Yeah.
I think you'll get a better teaching experience. I think our relationships,
And they're important too. Right?
yeah, definitely. Whilst I am student focused, I still care a lot about the health of our adult population, and part of that is about that student teacher interaction. And I think when the teacher's feeling good and healthy, I think you get the best of them in the same way they get the best of you when you're feeling good. The other thing that I think is nice about Apex is it gives an opportunity for adults and students to interact in a non-academic setting, right?
Yeah.
Because so much of your time here, there's kind of this hierarchical construct where you're being graded and you're being asked to do things for work, whereas when Mr. Hines is over there, and obviously you're focusing on this conversation, but if you were working out, you two could have just a general chit chat.
Yeah.
And I think that's really humanizing, right? Like, we're not just students, we're not just teachers, right? We're people, and we interact.
I feel like the vibe is different. Like when I come to the Apex, I realize like the environment is really friendly. Like everyone there, like it's just chill. Like you go and work out, and like you see other people lifting, and like you feel sort of sense of respect for them, because like they're hard at work, and then maybe you're resting and you're going back to hard at work, and like it's out of like an academic environment. Like instead of, oh, what you get on this test, you're like, oh, so what are you hitting today? Chest? Oh, I'm doing legs, or something like that. Yeah,
and I definitely feel very privileged and fortunate that I can build the type of relationships with students where it really the academics don't come into it. Like, Ben, I hope you do well, and I hope your course goes well. But then they we don't need to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
When you come in here, I'm interested in how you're doing and what you're going to be trained today, and I think it's nice to have that separation. So yeah, I do feel very fortunate to be able to build those relationships with students. Where at the end of the day, I don't really care what grades you're getting and have no idea what grades you're getting, and that's nice for me. I do feel fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting story, and I feel like the Apex as a whole, like compared to other schools, like the way you're trying to structure everything with 3 floors and each having a different purpose, and like taking things into consideration, like a safe space for females, or like a adult for Zumba or whatever, or like when there's rain. Like most other schools don't have that, and like we're just privileged here in SAS to be able to have a big space to train after school, and then we also have this place here, the second floor, to train like during free blocks or whatever, and then like females, if they don't feel so confident, they can go on Wednesdays here and not feel judged.
I think one thing maybe I didn't articulate is seeing that I don't want females to feel that they can only come and train Women's Wednesday, but I see it as a stepping stone.
Definitely.
You come in here, you get comfortable, maybe you come back on an Eagle block, or you once you've trained up here, you see that I guess it's my job when a person walks in this space to make sure that that person feels comfortable, and if they want to, they will return. I can't make people come back. No, I can't make people come back. I will encourage.
For them.
Yeah, but I do think probably that is. Look, physical safety is obviously psychological safety is my primary role here, right? That any student in this space needs to be safe. But I think the extension of that is that they feel welcome. And going back to what you're saying, I appreciate some of those kind words. I think this school has incredible resources. Incredible space. The free floors. What you're talking about, the size of our main gym is our main floor is more like something you'd see at a college.
Definitely.
Which is incredible. I think that we've made real steps in terms of our equipment and progress. I do think there's more progress to be made. And I've been fortunate enough to travel around some of the IASA schools as part of my coaching through tennis. And I support the softball program as AIC. And so, when I go to these schools, and I'll be specific here, like when I go to Bangkok, their gym is much smaller than ours, but there's some things they're doing really well that I've taken note of, and in the time that I have left here, I will be trying to put some improvements in the short term, but also making suggestions about where the next round of procurement in terms of equipment goes. So I think we can take that next step forward, because I don't think we're anywhere near maximising what we can do in terms of potential. And then I think just another sort of thinking about the future. We've talked a lot about culture here. I talked about an inclusive culture, and I think we're moving towards that. We're making progress. We're not done, and we're never done, right? You have to keep working on it.
You're never done, yeah.
But I would say that over the next couple of years, my hope would be that we start to build a more integrated and inclusive S&C culture.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of people in here doing stuff, and we've got some athletes doing bits during the season, before the season. But I think the next step is to really crack that kind of egg about how do we get people coming in here in their pre-season, getting ready for their season.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the next wave. That's where I hope we go, so that it's normal for students to be in here off season when they're not playing their sports, preparing themselves. And we do have individuals doing it, but it's more on a sort of ad hoc basis, because going back to the resources that we have, I really think we could be doing more. And I acknowledge that's partly my responsibility, but that will go on to maybe be the next person's responsibility.
Yeah.
Alongside the importance of making an inclusive space.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good conversation, and we learned a lot about the Apex.
Cool.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something and have a little better understanding of a perspective of the gym life at school. I have linked a form down in the description where you can leave me some feedback, recommendations, and questions. If you have any questions regarding the Apex, feel free to contact Coach Nick. See you all next time. Take care.